Hi, and congratulations on completing week 3. We're getting into the heart or the middle of the course as we finish week 3 and go into week 4 and 5. So there's lots of things to do, and so far I think the class is coming along well. I wanted to just give a couple of notes on the assignments before we jump in, or as you jump into week 4. So this week was analyzing prophecy. We were to demonstrate an understanding of metaphorical language and language of blessing and destruction in prophetic language. And we did that with our literary discussion on, are we reading the Bible literally, and what does that mean? And through that conversation, we were able to, at least on a few posts, I noted that we've now come to Moody's understanding of a literal interpretation, which is Moody would define itself as literal, and I'll get to that in a minute. So second, to apply the language of blessing and destruction from prophetic text to contemporary text. That was your worksheet. Folks did fine there. And then draft a brief passage in similar style and content to prophetic texts. And the goal of that, and since we're here, we'll talk about it, the goal of the second part of this assignment was really just to get you thinking about how is prophecy written and how is it created. And I think folks embraced that fairly well. It was kind of a fun aspect. I didn't count off as long as you tried to do something for that second part. Now, on the first part, I asked as we approached, be sure to support your answers and engage with the reading. About half the class did not do that, and so there was a few point deduction. I want you to get into the practice, especially in a master's class where you're about to go out into the world as a master's prepared individual. Research is part of a master's preparation. And so being able to consistently, with every assignment that you write, there should be engagement with the research that is handed to you. That's your reading assignment. But there really should be research outside of the reading assignment that supports your argument with each assignment. So using the outline of characteristics of language and destructions that is discussed in Sandy, complete the blessings and discussions worksheet. Be sure to support your answer and engage with the reading. Detailed instructions are provided with the worksheet. So A's were very common on this, but hundreds were less common. All right, so on the interpretation of literal, I think we had some good discussion. The key here first is that while the standard Webster definition of literal may be one thing, the biblical understanding of literal is in fact another. And so for those who did just a general dictionary understanding, that's fine. But we really need to start looking at how in Scripture do we define terms. Literal, which is, I think Brooke was the one who brought Sproul in, and that's very similar to the Moody definition, where literal is a understanding of what the author literally meant when they wrote the text. And by that, it means that we have to take into account whether this text is prophetic, whether it is poetic, and what type of literary devices should be understood based upon genre to come to a literal understanding. Well, I think most folks in the class agree that if it is hyperbole, or if it's metaphor, or if it's simile, we should not take it at its literal words, but literally we should take it at what the author intended. That's easy, and I think everyone agrees. The harder question are things like Genesis 1 and 2, where God creates certain things in a day. Well, is a day considered to be 24 hours? Or is a day a prophetic device, meaning an age? Well, that's a much harder question. And people come to that question and say, I am a literal translationist, but I take it as poetic, and therefore it is not 24 hours. Others say, oh, no, you must be doing something very wrong. You're not really taking the Bible literally, because says a day. Well, hope you can see that literalists can take it in two different ways. And we have to decide first and foremost, is it poetic or is it not poetic? Another example is 40 years. 40 years is used over and over and over again in the Bible. And if you look at other ancient Near Eastern texts, we see that literal interpretations of 40 years can be 40 years, but it can also be an idiom or some type of a saying to represent a lifespan generation. 25 years is typically a generation before reproduction, but 40 years is considered to be a generation for lifespan. And so are they talking about 40 years as a lifespan, or are they talking about 40 literal years? And it muddies the ground or muddies the interpretation a little bit. And again, as master students, you're going to have to start interpreting texts based upon genre to try to determine what is the best understanding that the author intended when they wrote it. And Moody would still consider that a literal interpretation by its definition. Okay, those were our two assignments. Folks did well. The predominant grades are in the A range. On the discussion posts, if folks are not engaging over multiple sessions, I am marking off for that. If you're not capitalizing Bible, I am marking off, and I will continue to escalate that mark off. It is poor form for someone to not capitalize Bible. We're in a Bible college. So I would like to see you eradicate the shortcut of not capitalizing Bible. No, there was one other thing, but we'll get to that later. On the whole, everyone's doing well. I appreciate all the hard work as we move into week 4. Thanks.